Are you looking for a go-to rig you can use and have total confidence in, knowing that it will reset itself even after a fish has potentially attempted to take the bait? If that's the case, stick around for a few moments with me while I take you through a few simple steps of how I tie the fantastic Ronni Rig. Welcome back to the channel. For those of you that are new to the channel, thanks for checking it out. Hope you're all doing very well. As I said, we're going to take a quick look over the very famous Ronni Rig. I'm sure for many of you that might be new to carp fishing here in the USA, that by now I've seen many variations on a number of different rigs, from the most basic hair rig right up to the most advanced. Well, now you can put all those questions of different rigs and materials that you might need to use all to one side and know that this very simple rig can be tied with two very simple knots and have a rig ready to fish in just a matter of minutes. So let's take a look at the components used to make the Ronni Rig and how it's all put together. The components you will need are your choice of the following: hook link material, hooks, micro ring swivel or an alternative micro ring bait screw, shrink tube or an alternative that is a cut down liner liner. The cut down liner works in place of the shrink tube, so I'll go over that a little later with you in the video. Anti-tangle sleeves, puller tools, baiting needle, tungsten putty, bait floss, a lighter, and lastly, your choice of bait. For demonstration purposes, I'm using a DNA bait 18mm PB pop-up. To start, cut a length of shrink tubing. I cut mine about 10mm in length, keeping in mind this will shrink down once steamed. Next, take your hook of choice. Most hooks will work fine for this rig, however I personally prefer a more aggressive curve and opt for the PB Products Curve KD hook in a size 4 or a 2. They're superbly strong and very, very sharp. Next, slide the shrink tube onto the hook. Take the quick connect ring swivel and the hook. Pass the hook with the quick connect ring swivel through the front of the eye of the hook, like so. This may be a little tough depending on the quick connect swivel that you are using, but you should be able to tease it through the eye of the hook, as seen here. Now, slide the shrink tube down over the eye of the hook. Next, steam the shrink tube in place. I like to offset the hook from the swivel when doing this. It creates more of an aggressive curve in the rig, but feel free to experiment with this. Using different baits on this rig can mean that this will need to be tweaked also. As a safety note, if you are a minor, it's wonderful to have you here learning with me, but please make sure you're working with a parent or guardian at this part of the tutorial. Steam from the kettle can be very dangerous to work with and could cause serious burns if used incorrectly. Moving along, as I had mentioned before, you can cut down a liner in place of the shrink tube. This will give you the option of being able to change the hook if it's no longer sharp enough or can't be used any longer. To do this, take your chosen liner and cut down the thinner end of it like so. Next, just as you would with the shrink tube, slide this onto the hook, over the eye, but note how the thicker bore of the liner is towards the eye of the hook. This will help sliding it back over the eye of the hook and onto the hook of the swivel. Using this method means no steam, no lighter, so therefore it makes life nice and easy while out on the bank fishing. So once you have the shrink tube or the alternative method of the liner in place, take the micro ring bait swivel or the micro ring bait screw and pass this over the point of the hook. This will rest down on the shank of the hook for now. Following that, carefully slide on a hook bead. I line this bead up with the barb of the hook. It sets the angle of the hook when the bait is popped up off the bottom of the lake or the riverbed if using a pop-up bait presentation. However, you can move this up and down the shank of the hook, but generally placing it in line with the barb of the hook is a good starting point. For the rig, we're almost done at this stage, but next we have to attach the hook link material to the ring of the swivel. This can be done a number of ways depending on the material you prefer to use, but in this instance I'm using a stiff coated hook link. This will actually help keep the rig out of the way of the lead during the cast and also help it to kick out and fall away from the lead as it lands on the lake or the riverbed. To attach the hook link to the ring of the swivel, I'll simply tie a 4-turn grinner knot. To tie the knot, pass the end of the hook link once through the ring of the swivel like so. Then bring the tag end up alongside the main section of the hook link. Now make a loop using the tag end and keep this against the main section of the hook link. From there, you're going to make 4 passes of the tag end through the loop and over the main section of the hook link material. Moisten the knot and snug this down. Once the knot is formed like so, you can then slide the knot down the main section of the hook link material up to the ring of the swivel, as seen here. Now taking the other end of the hook link material, thread on an anti-tangle sleeve like so. Make a simple loop and tie an overhand knot. Next, using the puller tools, one in the loop that you have just made and the other in the rig ring of the swivel. Now pull both puller tools away from one another. Putting tension on both knots will help seat the knots and stop any knots possibly slipping out later on when under tension from a fish. Next, trim off both the tag ends of material like so. Slide the anti-tangle sleeve up and over the knot. Next, we're going to take a look at how to attach the hook bait to the rig. We'll start with the micro ring bait screw. This is the most simple of the two. It's just a case of taking your chosen hook bait and slightly pushing the bait onto the screw. As you turn the bait screw, the threads will screw inside the bait. The bait will stay firmly on this until you're ready to change it. Ultimately, this is a very simple, fast and effective presentation that is ideal for using single hook baits. Next up, my preferred method and really a good alternative is the micro ring swivel and a length of bait floss to mount the baits. Take a short length of bait floss, roughly 5 inches, pass one end through the swivel and bring the swivel into the center of the bait floss like so. Tie a single overhand knot to secure the floss on the swivel. Next, mount your chosen bait or baits onto the baiting needle. And then, just as you would with a hair rig, slide these baits off of the baiting needle and onto the bait floss by forming a short loop with both tag ends like so. Once the bait or baits are mounted onto the bait floss, snug them up to the micro swivel. Following that, make 2 simple overhand knots in the bait floss, snugging them down to the bait. Trim off both tag ends, fairly short, finishing off by blobbing the ends of the bait floss using a lighter, like so. And again, another safety note, if you are a minor, as I said, it's wonderful to have you learning with me, but please make sure you are working with a parent or guardian at this point in the tutorial. Using a lighter to melt the bait floss could cause burns if not handled correctly. The final touch to this rig is dependent on whether or not you are using it with a pop-up bait or a bottom bait presentation. Both work very well with this rig. If you are choosing to fish with a popped up bait, you're going to use a small amount of tungsten putty. This will help balance out the pop-up and stop it floating up too high from the lake or riverbed. I prefer to roll a small amount of tungsten putty between my thumb and finger, and once small enough, to pass it through the ring of the swivel. Then folding back the ends over the ring and the knot of the hook link, like so. This gives the putty something to hold on to and won't affect the rig in any way. I finish it up by again rolling the putty between my thumb and finger to mould it neatly around the knot and the ring of the swivel. And there you have it guys, the Ronni Rig. It's a rig for many, myself included, that just screams confidence. The rig mechanics allow the rig itself to reset should there be a failed attempt of a fish picking up the bait. It's ideal to fish in many situations and its construction is so simple, yet offers some of the best hook holds ever seen. The bonus to the Ronni Rig is that you can fish both bottom baits and pop-ups, giving you a number of options that help you catch more carp. For those of you that are interested in taking a look at or using any of the items seen in this tutorial today, I've left the specific item names and links in the details below, where you can go over to Big Carp Tackle to find them all there. For those of you that are interested in following along with more of this type of content, I hope you will consider subscribing to my channel. Should you choose to, be sure to hit that notification bell, that way I can keep you up to date on all my carpy goings on. I hope this tutorial helps you in your angling and I'd love to hear about it if it has. If you do have any questions on the Ronni Rig, please feel free to leave them below. And as always, thanks for watching.